President Biden is addressing growing frustration with long COVID testing lines across the country. In some cases, people say they're waiting up to 5 hours to get tested for the virus. The White House plans to make available 500 million at-home rapid tests to Americans beginning next month. Some critics are arguing the federal government should be doing more. President Biden spoke about these issues in an interview with ABC's David Muir.
Nothing's been good enough. But look where we are. When last Christmas we were in a situation where we had significantly fewer people vaccinated, emergency rooms were filled. If you are tested, if you know where you are in terms of having gotten the shots, there's no reason why you can't get together with your family and your friends. We couldn't do that last Christmas.
Ed O'Keefe is at the White House with more on this. We have lots to talk about, Ed. So before we get to the administration's response, we're learning Vice President Kamala Harris had a close call with the virus after a staff member tested positive for COVID, and House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn also announced he tested positive for the virus. Has the vice president been tested, and do we know about Congressman Clyburn's condition?
Yeah, she's been tested. She was tested twice yesterday and will be tested again tomorrow as part of the ongoing testing regimen once you've been exposed to somebody in close contact. So far, obviously negative. You'd know otherwise by now, if not. And the Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, said last night he's got a breakthrough case, but he's asymptomatic. There are some reports apparently this breakthrough case, however, is going to keep him from his own daughter's wedding, which is a real unfortunate development and a sign of just how brutal this virus continues to be as it upends holiday plans for all sorts of people. But we've had it pretty bad here in Washington, and as it continues to spread across the country, you're going to hear all sorts of people getting it at various levels of society.
Right. Well, the good news is President Biden continues to test negative for COVID after another staffer who flew with him on Air Force One tested positive. How is the White House monitoring this situation with more cases popping up?
Yeah, well, I mean, they continue to test him on a fairly regular basis. They don't tell us every time he gets one, but because in this case he'd had that close contact, they let us know that he tested negative. He's going to be spending the Christmas holiday here at the White House. That was always the plan. And we'll see what his travel schedule looks like next week, if at all. Most likely he ends up spending most of his time in Delaware, as he often does on the weekends anyway. But we'll see what other precautions might be taken. He's managed to maintain a pretty typical public schedule this week. We know he's had meetings behind the scenes. That interview he took with that other network last night, you'll notice that he was at a notable distance from the person interviewing him. And that's in keeping with White House protocol that has sort of kept the president from people who aren't normally here at the building at a further distance, even though they have to be tested when they show up. So obviously there's concern, especially again because it's been spreading here in Washington at a pretty decent clip. And the White House has vowed that should anything happen to the president, first lady, vice president, or second gentleman, they would let us know. And the vice president and second gentleman, by the way, are spending the holidays through the new year in their home in Los Angeles. So they're not here in the D.C. area.
Okay, so you mentioned that other clip that we played before from the interview with ABC. And when we're talking about the administration's response to Omicron, the president was asked if he should have acted sooner. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
We weren't talking about Omicron 6 months ago, but it's just recent. And so we are chasing Omicron.
So, Ed, what more did we hear from the president during that interview about why the administration wanted to respond to Omicron?
Right. He said that, among other things, they regret not ordering these 500 million tests sooner, about 2 months ago. And we should clarify something that was said a little while ago. They're not sending 500 million tests next month. They're going to begin making up to 500 million available. 500 million tests have not yet even been manufactured by those that can make them. The administration, as far as we can tell, has not yet signed a contract to buy them. And they're going to have to get in line. Several other states and cities have already ordered tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of tests. And the companies that make them say they can only make about several 10 million a month. So 500 million is going to require a big ramp up in production by these companies, and means that we're probably not going to see most of those tests distributed until February, maybe even March, which if current trajectories coming from other countries that are dealing with this are any guide, it could mean that by then the Omicron variant, God willing, has passed for the most part in this country. So we'll wait and see about that. And there's no answers yet about the distribution of this, what website you would use to sign up, whether that website's going to be able to sustain the crush, and how quickly those tests would get to you. All those things to come in the next few days. Beyond that, of course, they're surging testing sites. First, they're in New York, where you are. They will send them to other parts of the country as well as needed. And they're ready to deploy thousands of military medical professionals as well into hospitals should there be shortages of staff or just overwhelmed emergency rooms by people coming in with cases of the variant.
Hopefully they learned something from the vaccine rollout last year about that supply and demand. Also in that interview, President Biden told David Muir he'll run for re-election in 2024 if he's in good health. The president also said a rematch against former President Trump would make him more likely to run. Let's play a bit of that part.
You plan to run for re-election?
Yes.
And if that means a rematch against Donald Trump?
You're trying to tempt me now. Sure. Why would I not run against Donald Trump, even the nominee? That would increase the prospect of running.
Ed, he sounds excited. What has been the reaction to the president's statements?
He has said in the past that he plans to run, and he always makes a good point about fate, you know, that things can change in your life or in your circumstance, so you don't want to be declarative about it. And he points out that he's had plenty of moments in his own family's life that have, you know, steered things in different directions. So that's the only reason he holds the door open to it not happening. But by all accounts, the plan is for him to run for re-election right now with the vice president. They know that a rematch with the former president is possible. And yeah, he and many other Democrats are relishing the opportunity for that if it comes. But also know, as he said, that fate can twist things in different ways. And these conversations we've been having about his political fate, that of Republicans, and who's going to control Congress next year are all rather just academic for now until we see what happens. So no surprise that he would say he's running for re-election, and that's what folks should anticipate, at least for now.
Very well. And before we let you go, Ed, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear legal challenges to two of the Biden administration's COVID-19 vaccine requirements. When are oral arguments set to begin, and which of those requirements are they considering?
January 7th is when they're holding this special emergency hearing. This doesn't happen often, and it's actually the Friday before they were scheduled to reconvene for their winter session. So it shows you that they are trying now to respond to this. They're going to consider two different challenges. One, to the vaccinate or test mandate that now exists or will start existing next month for large employers, those employing hundreds of employees or more. And then a vaccine requirement for medical professionals in hospitals that get Medicare and Medicaid funding, which is essentially every hospital in the country. There have been challenges brought by different industries, by different segments of the healthcare sector as well, saying that because of religious exemptions or other reasons they shouldn't have to exist. We should point out the Supreme Court so far has done a pretty notable job of batting away challenges to statewide mandates or public health laws. The only one they've struck down so far is one regarding religious places of worship and whether or not they could hold services. But otherwise, they've told challengers to other state mandates, you got to deal with them. So by holding this one, it may be that they're trying to establish or reassert the federal government's ability to put up these kinds of workplace safety standards. We will see what goes on. The White House says the Justice Department will vigorously defend it, and they anticipated the challenge. And again, January 7th is when they'll hear it.
Ed, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
You too, Jesse. Take care.